Hey guys, this lesson is on finding the perimeter of squares and rectangles. The first thing we need to talk about is some vocabulary. So our first term is going to be the term perimeter, and perimeter is the distance around the outside of a figure. So think perimeter kind of sounds like outer, right? So perimeter is when we add up all of the outside edges of a figure. The next word we're going to talk about is the word area. Area is the amount of space covered by the inside of a figure. So perimeter is outside, area is inside. The next word we're going to talk about is the word dimension. A dimension is a measurement in one direction. So an example of this would be that the length and the width are dimensions. So when I say the dimensions of a rectangle, I am talking about the length and the width. Down at the bottom, you'll see where we have just a little graphic reminder of the difference between area and perimeter. So area is everything that you could shade on the inside, and perimeter is the outside edge. So think about it like this. If you were fencing in your yard or putting a fence around your backyard, perimeter is like the fence. An area is like the grass that is growing and covers the ground. Before we get started finding the perimeter of squares and rectangles, we're going to go over some important rules to remember. Our first important rule to remember is that the opposite sides of a rectangle are always equal. So I know that if the length of this rectangle is 8, if I go directly across, that side is also 8. And if the width of this rectangle is 5, I'm going to go directly across, and I know that that side will also be 5. And it's important to remember this because when we find perimeter, we want to make sure that we're adding up all 4 of the sides, even if they only show us 2. The next rule that's important to remember is that all sides of a square are always equal. So if the problem mentions a square, all sides have to be the same. So if I tell you that this is a square and that one of the sides is 3, then you would be able to know that all of the sides are 3 because it's a square. The last rule to remember is that perimeter is measured in normal units. Area, on the other hand, is measured in square units. The next thing we're going to talk about is the formula or the process for finding perimeter. The formula for perimeter of a rectangle or square is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width, or length plus width plus width. This is basically just a fancy way of saying add all the sides. So we're going to add in the length twice and the width twice because we want to make sure we're accounting for all 4 sides of a rectangle or square. Write an expression that could be used to find the perimeter of the rectangle below. So in this problem, the first thing I need to do is I'm going to mark my unknown sides. I know that if the length is 5 on the top, it will also be 5 on the bottom. And I know if the width is 3 on the right, it will also be 3 on the left. And I know that to find perimeter, I add all 4 sides, or I do length plus width plus width. So my length is 5, so it would be 5 plus 5, and my width is 3 plus 3 plus 3. So my expression would be 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3. Now, when I add these together to find the perimeter, I know that 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13, plus another 3 is 16. So the perimeter here would be 16 units. But this question just asks for the expression, which would be 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3. Now we're going to do some practice in the simple process of finding perimeter. The first question says, what is the perimeter of the rectangle below? Remember that your first step should be locating and labeling the missing sides. So getting started in this problem, the first thing I'm going to do is label my missing sides. Then I know that I have to add up all four sides, or use 2L plus 2W, or L plus W plus W. So I'm going to add 8 plus 8 plus 5 plus 5, and that's going to give me the perimeter. I know that 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 5 would be 21, plus another 5 would be 26. Or you could have just said 16 plus 10. Either way, you would get 26 units as the perimeter. The next question says, what is the perimeter of the square below? Remember the rule we talked about earlier when discussing squares. In solving this problem, the first thing I want to do is label all of my sides. I know that because this is a square, that means all the sides are equal. And I know that when I'm finding perimeter, the process is to add all four of the sides. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, or 3 times 4, will give me a perimeter of 12 units. Okay guys, now we're going to dive right in and we're going to do some perimeter problems that involve a couple more steps. This problem says Miss Earls showed her class the rectangle below. What would the new perimeter be if she doubled the length and the width? So before I get started on this problem, I want to look at what I already know. I want to know that the current length is 6, and I know that the current width is 4. And I want to take a good hard look at what the problem is asking me. What would the new perimeter be if she doubled the length and the width? So this tells me that I'm looking for a perimeter, which means I'm going to add all of the sides. But it asks me for the new perimeter, which means that I'm going to need a new figure. And on that new figure, it says she doubled the length and the width. Well, doubled means 2 times. So 6 times 2 will be the new length, and 4 times 2 will be the new width. So our new length and width will be 12 and 8. Now that I have my new dimensions, I can move on to finding the perimeter. And I know I do that by adding all of the sides. I have to add in the width twice and the length twice. I know that 8 plus 8 is 16 and 12 plus 12 is 24. If I add 16 plus 24, I get 40. So if I were to double the length and the width of the original rectangle, my new perimeter would be 40. This next problem is going to be another multi-step problem. Alicia wants to put a fence around her yard. The yard is 3 times as long as it is wide. If the yard is 8 feet wide, how much fencing does she need to buy? You'll notice that the word perimeter and the word area are nowhere to be found in this problem. But it does tell us that she wants to put a fence around her yard. Well, we know that perimeter is the distance around the outside, and that area is the amount of space covered by the inside. So if we're looking at a fence, then we're looking at the area outside the yard, not the grass that covers it. So we know that in this problem, we're looking for perimeter. Now, in order to find perimeter, we need two things. We need the length and we need the width. Well, the problem tells me that the yard is 8 feet wide, and it's on my model, but I am missing the length. I don't have anything for the length. But the problem does tell me that the yard is 3 times as long as it is wide. So it's 3 times as many as 8, or 3 times 8. I know that 3 times 8 is 24. So my length is 24. Now 24 is not my answer. That was the first step in solving this problem, because I can't find perimeter without knowing both the dimensions of the length and the width. The question asks me, how much fencing does she need to buy? So the question is actually asking me to find the perimeter. And I do that by adding the length twice and the width twice. I know that 24 plus 24, or 24 times 2, is 48. 8 plus 8 is 16. And now I need to add 48 and 16. 8 plus 6 is 14, and I carry the 1. 1 plus 4 plus 1 is 6. So the perimeter is 64, so she needs to buy 64 feet of fencing. And I know that it's 64 feet because if I go back in my problem, the yard is measured in feet.